Hey, BreitWerks here. What are we doing? We are going to change all the fuel lines on this CIS system for a turbo. So I've got it mocked up on one of the other engines that we have. And I got a box. I got a box of all the fuel lines, well, minus one. This is my $1,000 box if y'all looked at the short. But you've got your return line. That looks like it is for the actual cold start valve. What else is in here? This is a little one, so this one most likely, yep, that's going to be for the warm-up regulator. And somewhere in here should be the feed line. Is that it? That might be. No, that's not it either. So anyway, we are gonna get on with this. That's for the warm-up regulator. And we're gonna go ahead and install these guys. Again, it's easier to do this, while you have the engine out of the car for sure. But I did two last year where we replaced all the same hoses and we were able to do it inside the car. But, oh, okay, yes. Porsche told me that one of them was on back order, so I'm gonna assume it's the big feed line because we wouldn't have missed that in the order. But we're gonna get on with it, and if I come across anything cool, you'll notice that this guy, not every CIS system is the same, even though they try to tell us it is. First of all, this one's aluminum, right? So it's because it's aluminum in color, we know that this is a USA fuel head. So the USA fuel head and the Euro fuel head were a little bit different than each other. But you'll notice most of the fittings are the same, but here you've got this frequency valve or a damper. So you've got a double, what are those, banjos on there. So you got to make sure that you use the right crush washers, or you're going to have fuel coming everywhere. So I think when we put this guy back together, he looks pretty happy with aluminum, but we may use copper. We may use copper just because I anneal them once I get them from who we buy them from to actually soften them up a little bit more, and they do a little bit better job of holding fuel in. You can kind of see here that the fuel head's weeping, but it's not weeping enough, and the car ran great, so we didn't mess with this part. If you followed along, you saw that we did a lot of work on the intake manifold, but kind of leaving this whole thing apart other than changing the lines. And the good thing on the turbos is you've got the hard lines, so you're not that worried about old lines that are getting hard and pop. One of these lines pops, especially a feed line or even a return line, and now you've got not only a mess, but a pretty serious fire hazard. So we're gonna get on with it, start changing out these lines one by one. And like I said, as we get to something interesting, I'll let you know. Oh, one thing. Yeah. On the warm-up regulators, when you're changing these lines, you've got to make sure that you counter hold, because if this disc spins, right, if that disc inside the warm-up regulator spins, you now need to send it out to have it recalibrated. So what you can do is you can hold on to this fitting down here, I believe it's a 12, and you hold that fitting still, and then you can break both of these guys loose so that you don't end up moving that disc, because if that disc rotates, now you've just thrown your warm-up regulator out of calibration. And you can see this is already an adjustable warm-up regulator. I'm not a huge fan of those anymore. I was back in my younger days. I thought it was a cool idea, but you know what? When you get them set up right, they work, and then you just leave them alone. But yeah, we're gonna probably pull this out so that we can get access to the cold start valve in the back and a couple of the other areas that we need to get to. So we're gonna get on with it. So when you're changing these fuel lines, one of the things that is kind of a pain in the butt, but it's good if you know it ahead of time. You've got to take off these two fuel lines, and they are attached in the back to this line. So your 1 through 3, or 1, 2, 3 fuel lines have to come off because you can't get your tool in there when the fittings are in the way. So, you know, this is just a 12 millimeter tool, nothing special, but it won't fit in between here. And you can actually see that these things are shaped, right? Not the other ones, just these two, so that you can get a tool in there. So once you've got these three off, there's no reason not to clean them up. So we've got them in the ultrasonic cleaner right now. We'll get those cleaned up. But really what we were trying to do is just change this line here. So we're going to keep going with that and get that line changed. You can see here that what this line is doing, if the diaphragm inside your warm-up regulator fails, it spits fuel out of this little spigot hole here, right? And you don't want that just spitting fuel on the engine. So with the original air box or the original air cleaner, this goes into the air cleaner because the thought is, hey, if this guy starts spitting fuel, spit it into the air cleaner, car will go extremely rich and quit running. Whereas if the diaphragm fails in here and all it's doing is spewing fuel, it's going to make its way down into the exhaust. So when you go to these aftermarket air cleaners, you got to think about that. So basically it's the same line and it's just routed into the back of the air cleaner. And that way, if any fuel does come out of here, goes into the air cleaner, serves the exact same function that the factory wanted, where it'll dump fuel right inside here, car will go extremely rich and probably shut down, and then somebody will have to figure out, hey, my warm-up regulator diaphragm has failed. So pretty important safety function. A lot of guys overlook this. They just let this vent to atmosphere. On the turbo, you do have a diaphragm down here. So if that thing fails, you can get in trouble. On some of the SC stuff, it's not as big a deal. Sometimes they'll put a vacuum line on here to try to change the fuel pressure. But in this case, we just need to get this out of the way and unclipped from this line that we're trying to change. So since we know we've got a new one, let's put this to the bend test. See if it'll... Hey, look at that. This line probably has another 6 months left in it. Maybe we shouldn't change it. I'm kidding. We're going to change it because, yeah, 6 months is not what you want. Plus, this is your control pressure, so you've got fuel flowing through that thing at a decent rate. And should this line burst, it's going to end in a bad day. So we're going to keep going. So whenever you get a new line, whether it's an oil line or a fuel line, there's two things you want to do. Number one, you want to blow through it to make sure there's not any debris in it before you install it. Right, so you blow through it. The other thing you want to do is you want to just check the date of manufacture, right? You don't want to end up putting something in that's 7 years old or, you know, I mean, the whole point here is fresh rubber so that it'll last and it'll reduce any risk of a fuel problem happening. So when you look at the Porsche tags, they always have a manufacturer date, right? So in this case, it's 8/3/22. So either way, we know it's 2022. European is usually, this is going to be March 8th, or maybe it's August 3rd, because a lot of Americans are buying this stuff. But really, I'm just looking for the year. 2022, that's a fresh line. It hasn't been sitting in stock somewhere for a really long time. You know, everybody loves new old stock parts. Yeah, but anything with rubber is susceptible. So new old stock doesn't really buy you anything unless it was kept out of any UV, air conditioned, and all of that type of stuff. And you can't always count on that. So blow through the line, check the date that it was made, and you'll be in pretty good shape. So we're going to get this guy tightened down, hooked back up. He goes to the warm-up regulator, aka the whir. Oh, look, he's a little bit shorter, so we're going to have to do some finagling. All right, we're going to get on with it. All right, we got all our fuel lines replaced except the feed line. That's the one that's on back order from Porsche. But here are the lines that we replaced. So this guy goes from the fuel head to the damper. So if we check him, that's him. And, you know, he's tightened down. I can't find torque values on this. If anybody can find torque values, section 25 of the workshop manual, there is no torque values for those hollow bolts. But anyway, let's stick with it. Come around here and we can see that we've got him all torqued down. So the warm-up regulator line, that guy came from the back of the fuel head, comes around to the front of the warm-up regulator. In order to get that guy off, these three guys had to come off, so they're all tightened down. Again, can't find a torque value. If anybody knows where to find that, let me know. This little guy here goes to the cold start valve. So he starts here, loops underneath the fuel head there, and then comes down and goes right in there. Now make sure you get that one tight. See, I'm actually going to have to move this one a little bit because you won't be able to get the plug on it, right? So this guy needs to actually rotate a little bit down. But that's if that one doesn't get tight, I don't know how you're tightening that when it's in the car. Probably not a line you're replacing when it's in the car. This little guy here, warm-up regulator, control pressure, right? So torque one side, torque the other. And then this is the big return line. So with the big return line, that starts here, comes over, and then you have the output going to the tank, the output that also goes to your fuel accumulator. Now, everybody hates these. I hate them too, these standoffs, right? But these things are super important because you don't want these lines moving around or laying in the wrong place. So yes, it is a gigantic pain in the ass to get these bolts out and then get everything centered and put back in. We actually get to do it twice because we are going to change that other line. But if you're doing this at home, make sure you put these clamps back in. Same thing goes for the clamps that are on the actual fuel injector lines. They just hold everything, keep everything from being in the wrong spot. But yeah, so we get all of that stuff done. Here's all the hardware we changed out. These are all different crush washers and the one little 10 millimeter that holds this guy. And then when I took everything out, I used something called Berryman's B12. If you've heard of it, good, you know it's good stuff. Some people use brake clean, but there actually is a difference. This guy has, and for some of you DIY guys, you probably can make this yourself. Acetone and toluene are the two first products, right? So we learned in chemistry class in high school, that means that it has the most of them. So acetone, toluene, and if we look at brake clean, it also starts out with acetone, but then it goes to methanol, then your carbon dioxide gas, and then down to toluene. So this guy here actually has more of what we need in them. Plus, it's marketed and it was made to be a carb choke throttle body cleaner, so it's working better with fuel. So all the lines that I took off after they were cleaned, they got blown out with Berryman's. Each one of the fittings got cleaned with Berryman's. So it's, hey, maybe one day I'll figure out how to put up a link to be an Amazon affiliate, but until then, you guys are on your own. Google Berryman's B12, buy a bottle. So you saw how involved this is. The moral of the story here that I'll leave you with is next time you have an engine out on your 930, make sure you get these fuel lines changed. Bite the bullet, spend the $1,000. Actually, it's probably going to be another $200 for this, so it's probably $1,200 in parts. But spend $1,000 on the parts because all of these little rubber parts, they perish over time. They get hard and dry rot. You know, legend has it, these are the #1 reasons that poor little Porsches tend to get very, very hot in the back of the car. So have that done. Bite the bullet. Have it done when the engine's out. You can change some of them when the engine's in the car, but if you're having an engine out service, just tell your mechanic or yourself, order the right lines. Don't fudge around with this stuff. All right, hey, thanks for watching. Check us out at BreitWerks.com if you like these kind of videos. go ahead and click that subscribe button so you can follow us around, and have a fantastic day.